Isn't it fascinating? On February 13, every year, panic sets in among millions of people who suddenly realize they forgot to plan something spectacular for tomorrow. And I'm not talking about a casual, oh shoot, I should grab some flowers. I'm referring to a sudden ping of existential crisis. Almost as if they've remembered that they left the stove on 3 years ago and right now their whole relationship will go up in flames because they didn't get a reservation at that French place with the hard-to-pronounce name. But what hardly gets talked about is the people who have the healthiest, longest-lasting relationships. They usually don't lose sleep over Valentine's Day. Now, before you think I'm just some cynical person who hates love, let me be clear. I'm not saying romance is dead or that you shouldn't do nice things for your partner. What I'm saying is that the psychology behind why we make such a massive deal out of this one specific day reveals something really uncomfortable about how we think about relationships. And it's probably not what you think. See, there's this concept in psychology called relationship maintenance, and it's basically all the little things we do to keep our partnerships healthy. Researchers John Gottman and Robert Levinson spent decades studying couples, and what they found was pretty remarkable. The couples who stayed together weren't the ones who had these grand, sweeping romantic gestures. They were the ones who consistently showed up for each other in small ways. Gottman called these bids for connection, tiny moments where one partner reaches out and the other responds. Things like making coffee the way they like it or actually listening when they talk about their annoying coworker or noticing when they seem off and asking about it. The couples who thrived did this regularly. What about those who didn't? They saved it all up for special occasions. That's where Valentine's Day becomes this weird trap. What do you think happens when all relationship energy is put into one day? You end up essentially saying the other 364 days don't matter quite as much. It's like going to the gym once a year and expecting to become fit. Your relationship muscles don't work that way. There's been research on this before, and I'll have a link to them in the description. When people feel pressure to be romantic on certain dates, such as Valentine's Day or New Year's Eve, it leads to a decline in relationship satisfaction. According to the published study, they've dubbed it prescribed relationship behaviors. And it seems that obligations suck the romance out of the relationship rather than a genuine expression, losing its meaning. Your brain can identify when you feel like, I'm doing this because society says I have to or I'm a bad partner, versus when you're doing something because you genuinely want to. So there is a subtle difference. Think about that for a second. The very act of making Valentine's Day this huge pressure-filled event might actually be undermining the thing it's supposed to celebrate. But there's more to it than that. When we fixate on Valentine's Day as this ultimate test of love, we're buying into what psychologists call symbolic self-completion theory. Basically, when we feel insecure about something, like whether we're good partners or whether our relationship is solid, we try to compensate by engaging in symbolic behaviors that prove we're committed. The bigger the gesture, the less we have to worry about the actual daily reality of our relationship. It's like posting a long Instagram caption about your amazing partner on their birthday while ignoring them the rest of the year. The performance of love becomes more important than love itself. Sadly, this pressure doesn't just affect individuals. It affects entire relationships through something called social comparison theory. Leon Festinger first described this back in 1954, but it's more relevant now than ever. We constantly compare our relationships to other people's relationships, especially now with social media. So when Valentine's Day rolls around and everyone's posting their elaborate date nights and expensive gifts and surprise getaways, you're no longer just up against your expectations, but also the highlight reels of everyone else. Your subconscious sees all these grand gestures and begins to think, am I good enough? Is my relationship as good as theirs? Even though logically speaking, you know that nobody is posting about their boring Tuesday nights when they just sit in silence together, which is actually where all the intimacy lives. There's this wonderful study by Eli Finkel and colleagues about self-expansion theory. Essentially, couples who grow and engage in novel experiences together report more satisfaction in their relationship. But those memories don't have to be an extravagant meal or an expensive vacation. They only need to be new and a shared experience. Trying something new together, whether it's tackling a recipe or simply walking a new route. What matters above all else is the novelty itself, not the cost or Instagrammability. So when you make Valentine's Day this enormous production, you're actually missing the point. You're focusing on the spectacle instead of the substance. It's like buying the most expensive birthday cake you can find instead of remembering what flavor they actually like. And let's talk about what happens to the people who are single on Valentine's Day, because that's its own psychological minefield. There's this concept called social pain. And neuroscientists have found that being excluded or feeling left out activates the same brain regions as physical pain. When you're single on Valentine's Day and the entire world seems to be celebrating romantic love, it's not just uncomfortable. It's actually painful in a very literal neurological sense. But here's what's wild. That pain isn't because you're actually alone. It's because you feel like you're supposed to be celebrating something you don't have. Remove the cultural expectation and suddenly February 14 is just another Thursday. The suffering isn't inherent to being single. It's manufactured by the collective agreement that this day matters more than others. Now, I'm not suggesting we all become relationship anarchists who refuse to acknowledge Valentine's Day exists. What I'm suggesting is that maybe, just maybe, we've been thinking about this backwards. Instead of making one day incredibly important, what if we made every day a little bit important? In her research, psychology professor Sarah Algo found something profound about gratitude. When partners regularly appreciated each other, not necessarily on special occasions, but sort of spontaneously and authentically, it benefited both individuals. They were more connected and satisfied with their bond. The key word being genuine, not performative or obligatory, simply a real genuine recognition of the other. It's a lot more difficult than just buying roses annually since it actually requires sincere attention. True devotion is being present when you're exhausted after a long day, when it's inconvenient, and when nobody's present to see you do those little things. A relationship that doesn't live off of validation from a calendar date or your friends' impressed reactions on social media. So maybe the healthiest thing you can do this Valentine's Day is not make a big deal out of it. Maybe have a nice dinner if you want to, get some chocolate, watch a movie, or don't. Let it be optional instead of obligatory. And then spend the rest of the year building the kind of relationship where your partner already knows they're loved. And not because you proved it on February 14, but because you prove it on Tuesday afternoons and Saturday mornings and every other unremarkable day. Because the truth is, if your relationship exclusively feels special on Valentine's Day, it's likely not that special. It's just scheduled. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing. I've got more deep dives like this coming. And if you'd like to support the channel and help me keep making these kinds of videos, you can tap the join button to become a member. It genuinely means a lot.